All right, are we live? Yes, looks like we are live. Hello, everyone, my followers of darkness, shadow scavengers, and villainy aficionados. Welcome, bienvenue to another live review of mine. Today, I'm going to finally review a movie that I've been waiting for, for a very, very long time, ever since they announced they're going to make a new one. And of course, that is none other than, of course, one of the most iconic, dynamic duo in movie culture history, Wallace and Gromit. Vengeance most foul. I mean, for some people, they were waiting for Chicken Run, Dawn of the Nugget. Some people may wait for a new Shaun the Sheep, movie. But for me, this was the shit I was looking for. Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul, a project that first and foremost, the legend himself behind the creation of Wallace and Gromit, Nick Park, returns to direct this movie, or should I say, like one of the directors of this movie, which of course is just absolutely amazing. But but basically doing a project that at first supposedly it was supposed to be a short, but then later on they kind of like, you know what, let's make it into a movie, and that's exactly what they did. Oh my god, I mean, we have been waiting for like 19 years. It was 19 years since the Curse of the Were Rabbit, the 19 years before like an actual full length Wallace and Gromit movie. And I'm gonna say this right off the bat, guys, it does not disappoint. Okay, like this for me is another win for Aardman. Totally, like definitely another win for Nick Park, Wallace and Gromit franchise, but also for Aardman. Most of all. So let us begin, shall we? So basically, anyone who's wondering, when it comes to the overall story of Wallace and Gromit, the premise basically is you have Gromit that's kind of springs into action because after after like Wallace's invention, kind of goes like haywire, basically, and goes rogue, in other words, and he's framed for a series of suspicious crimes caused by an old friend of theirs, or should I say, an old rival of theirs. That was introduced all the way back from 1993. I mean, that is literally one of the first things, because, like, okay, so basically, to cut the story short, I mean, I'm going to try to be as spoiler less as possible. But basically, the story is, as I said, like basically, Gromit goes into action because Wallace created another invention called, aka Norbot. Basically, they was supposed to be designed for helping people, in the garden, and everything that's possible around the house. And then all of a sudden, Norbert goes bonkers, basically short circuited, and does suspicious crimes. And basically, Wallace now is being accused of these crimes. But behind the shadows, there's an evil mastermind that plotted all of this. But why? I don't know. Maybe revenge, And of course, that villain is none other than, of course, the one and only Feathers McGraw. I mean, like, a villain that we haven't seen ever since the Wallace and Gromit short, Wrong Trousers. Like, I mean, that's the first one, because really, Wallace and Gromit, every short, every story that Nick Park and the crew did in Arman, none of them ever was connected as it was this one, because this movie not only is connected with a little bit with the previous movie, but also with a short that was released, I think, like in 1993, I think. And again, so the overall, so basically that's it. That's the overall story of Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul. And I have to tell you, even though for me personally, I would say, if I have to make a comparison between the two movies, I would say the Curse of the Were Rabbit actually for me was actually a little bit more intriguing, a little bit more exciting than this one, because this one, for Vengeance Most Foul, I would say it was a little bit more simpler than what the first one was. But again, even with that, I didn't mind, because there was a lot of things in it that I adored, like all the new characters returning, from of course, Gromit going into action, the character of Wallace, the dynamic of Wallace and Gromit, which is another question a lot of people have. Does it nail the dynamic between Wallace and Gromit? And I'll tell you, it does. Oh my God. Because like one of the things when you see Wallace and Gromit, one of the things that you will always get is the dynamic between Wallace and Gromit. The overall friendship that these two have, the overall like dynamic, the comradeship they possess and everything. How close they are together. Always like look each other's backs and everything. Like it's so heartwarming. Like and that's definitely one of the things I will definitely categorize the movie as like a heartwarming, well made movie, but because like one of the things, besides, because this movie, like all like the previous Wallace and Gromit movie, of course, it doesn't go away from the humor. It has a very typical Wallace and Gromit humor that we all have seen from the shorts and all the way to this movie. But I think like the most powerful thing about this movie, I would say, is definitely the charm, the heartwarming elements. So there are even some emotional moments in this movie as well, like especially towards the end, like that almost actually made me drop a tear. Actually, like something that basically goes like in the third act. It just simply so beautiful, and that's the way how I would describe this movie and the overall story. The story I would describe interesting, actiony, adventurous, mysterious a little bit, like that's the kind of how I would describe the story. But again, he had everything with every single Wallace and Gromit project had. He had heart, charm, emotions, the humor, the character development, especially the dynamic between Wallace and Gromit. Like there's so much about this story that I really, really adored. And of course, one of the other things I do have to mention is the animation. I mean, throughout the years, every single project that the Aardman does, the stop motion animation gets better and better. I mean, like, look, besides Aardman, we had a few other like non-motion anime movies out there, like from The Nightmare Before Christmas, The Corpse Bride, I think it was called Frankenweenie, the Box Trolls, and so on and so forth. But for me, I will say this, and I don't care what people say, none of the companies, none of the studios make the stop motion anime movies like Aardman does. Aardman, in my personal opinion, I always thought Aardman was unique. No, when it comes to as a studio for stop motion animation, and every time they do a movie or a short, they always deliver. And also one of the things I also have to mention, I do appreciate their work because, like, for every single movie, it takes them a long time. I mean, like as Nick Park was mentioning when they were doing the production of this movie, like they, in a week, they do like a 1 minute of a movie in a week. 1 minute. And for this particular movie, he even mentioned that it took them like a few years to do it, and to see the final product, I was like, I just simply applaud them for the hard work that everyone did throughout, this movie, which is absolutely, amazing. So overall, when it comes to animation, glorious as always. The story was great. Everything about it was like really, really good. Now, one of the things a lot of people have questions, especially after the passing, which of course is, does Ben Whitehead, does a good job replacing Peter Sallis as the voice of Wallace? And I'll tell you, he does. Oh, definitely he does. Now, I will say this: Peter Sallis, he's been voicing, God rest his soul, the star of the Last of the Summer Wine sitcom. Like, he has been voicing Wallace ever since I think like 1989. When they did that short with like when they went to the moon. So I think like it was so since then he has been voicing Wallace all the way. I think the last thing he did was like Wallace and Gromit, like contraptions shorts. I think that was the last thing he did. But basically so basically until then, all the way to 2012, when he officially retired, he was the voice of Wallace. When we see Wallace, we think Peter Sellers, because he embodied the character of Wallace. However, Ben Whitehead actually did some voices of Wallace in like some certain like commercials. I think he also did like in the Wallace and Gromit video game as well. So he was out there playing with the Wallace character and everything. But I feel like this is like his official debut in an actual like full length Wallace and Gromit project. And I will tell you, you could definitely feel it's Ben Whitehead, but he does an amazing job playing homage to Peter Sellers and trying to mimic his voice. So overall, I had no complaints about it. Like Ben Whitehead, like he keeps that legacy that Peter Sellers has left. Again, go rest his soul. But also at the same time, he adds something new to the character, and I'm all for it, So overall, for me personally, Ben Whitehead, I would say he's a worthy successor to Peter Sellers. I think like he will do great in the future, as Wallace. So for that personally, I had no problem because he delivered everything when it comes to jokes, when it comes to serious moments, when it comes to angry moments or emotional moments. He fucking delivered, and I'm really, really proud of seeing Ben as the new Wallace. I really am. Now, one of the other things I have to, of course, talk about is Feathers McGraw. Now, like I mentioned before, even though with the premise and everything, kind of like some people actually kind of assume that this like Norbot character, that he's gonna be the main villain, kind of like this artificial intelligence robot that Wallace created. But seeing that Feathers McGraw is the mastermind behind all this makes the story for me even better. Because we haven't seen this little fucker ever since the Wrong Trousers shorts, and seeing him again, this silent, evil, diabolical penguin doing all this plots and everything against Wallace and Gromit for what they did to him in that short and everything. It was just simply incredible, like this villain, I mean, when it comes to villains of Wallace and Gromit, they had a few. Like for example, you had that lady who owned that wool shop and her dog Preston. You had Feathers McGraw. You had Victor Quatermain. You had him. There were a few. Basically, there were a few villains. But I think like of all the Wallace and Gromit villains, I think like the most iconic one is Feathers McGraw, and the way how Nick Park and the crew use him is just simply pure perfection. Pure perfection. All the shit that was going on and seeing him as the mastermind behind the shadows, from the shadows, is just simply great. So all the way until the end, I think like they use Feathers McGraw, beautifully, and again, he nails it as the villain, in this movie. So it was just simply great seeing him back. It brought me so much nostalgia for like this old like Wallace and Gromit shorts. And again, I'm really, really surprised, that they have connected the Wrong Trousers with this one, because like there is a part, I'm not going into details, but there is a part in this movie that kind of makes the short, that kind of, leads directly into the short, the Wrong Trousers, which is kind of cool. So overall, again, what they did with Feathers McGraw was great, like I would say like one of my and even Feathers McGraw has a few like funny moments in this movie. It's like there's one in the third act when he was like in this like final confrontation between Gromit and him, and there was another one when he I mean it was in the trailer, so it's not a big spoiler, but basically when the Norbots came and rescued him, like every single one of them give him like this captain like salute. And basically, one of them was playing the bagpipes, and Feathers McGraw just simply, slapped the shit out of that Norbot. Like just simply like punched him away, like he was irritated, by him and everything. Oh, it was just simply fantastic. Silent but funny. That for me, is Feathers McGraw. So again, what they did with the character is just simply fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Now, one of the other things that usually with Wallace and Gromit is that because besides them, usually what you're always going to be interested is what new characters or maybe some old characters are they going to use for particularly for the movies and everything. Because the Curse of the Were Rabbit, like they had a lot of new characters, a lot of them, even though most of them were like, from the Wallace and Gromit neighborhood, But this one, actually, I would say they only had a few, which I think actually works a little bit better than what they did in the Curse of the Were Rabbit, because in the Curse of the Were Rabbit, like I said, besides Wallace and Gromit, Lady Tottington, with Victor Quartermain, maybe even the priest, but like besides them, they had a lot of the characters. And I think like, with just a few of them, like a handful of them in here, I think like it works way more better, So basically, besides Feathers McGraw, I would say one of the old characters that returned in this movie is the officer. What was his name? Macintosh. Yeah, that's his name. It was Officer Macintosh, basically, who we saw the last time in the Curse of the Were Rabbit. And also, I love that he was also connected with like the wrong trouser shorts. Like I just love that. So he's the only character that's kind of like returning alongside Feathers McGraw. And then besides them two, we also had Norbot, and we had the young officer who simply started working in the police department. And I have to tell you, I really like her character. I really like her character. I mean, she basically portrayed this kind of like rookie, like newbie police officer. But every scene she was in, and also the kind of like this relationship that she has, with the main chief of police, Macintosh, it is actually pretty funny. It is actually pretty funny, the way how they develop those characters and everything. So I felt like she was an interesting character of the new ones. Now, I have to talk about Norbit, which, of course, is the robot gnome that Wallace created. Oh, my God. This character is absolutely cute. Okay? Cute. And at times, I'm not going to say when and why, but there are times when he can be very creepy as well. Again, I'm not going to say why and when, but trust me, there will be times when he'll be that like hell of a creepy Norbot. But for the most part, Norbot is such a cute character, and the way how Reese Shearsmith, voiced the character, it made me love the character even more. Like there's even like a moment in the movie where like Norbot and alongside his like copies, they're kind of like singing while working in the garden, which is kind of like makes the character of Norbot even way more adorable. So I felt like he was also a nice addition alongside the young police officer in this movie. So overall, every single character they use, old and new, I had no complaints. I think like every single one of them was used the way they should have been, and everything. I think like none of them was left back. I mean, you have also cameos from the neighbors and other news reporters and everything, but those like four, I would say, are like the part of the major parts of this movie. So yet again, I think like they use them pretty well in this movie. I think like none of them were left out. Which kind of brings me, to this, the final thoughts. Which again, now Nick Park and the crew, I think like they still nailed it with this new Wallace and Gromit movie. I think it's another success for Aardman and stop motion animation. Everything about it was really beautifully done. I really liked the story. I mean, if I have to say some nitpicky things, I would say that maybe they could have made the story a little bit more exciting, a little bit more interesting. Because if you compare, I mentioned at the beginning, if you compare the Were Rabbit and this Vengeance Most Foul storylines, the Curse of the Were Rabbit actually was way more impactful, way more, I would say, in a way, powerful and more intriguing than this one. This one was a little bit simple. This one was a little bit simpler. So that's the only nitpicky negative I have. Maybe they could have made the story overall a little bit better. But still, what Nick Parker and the others did, still for me, it's a job well done. The animation is great. The characters are great. It has humor. It has emotional moments, serious moments. The dynamic between Wallace and Gromit is still a great success. They still marked it is like what is most important, what makes Wallace and Gromit iconic. So the new characters, old characters, all of them were used well. The overall some there are some a little bit action scenes in this movie, but very a handful of them. You know, when I say handful of them, I mean like a very, very small handful of them, but they're used well. Overall, I really don't have any really negative thoughts about it, because overall, I really had a blast with this movie, which kind of makes me wanting even more and more. Jesus, we have FRC. Good FRC. Great review, my friend. Subscribe to the best villain reviewer in the land. Much love, FRC. Well, thank you very much for the review. I'm really happy for that you have been enjoying it and all. And thank you for the free marketing you're doing for my channel. And again, thank you for the compliment. So it's really great to hear your comments, FRC, like always. Anyway, so overall, this movie itself, it just simply makes me wanting more and more from Wallace and Gromit. I mean, I honestly, I really don't know what they're gonna do next. I mean, I heard there'll be some Shaun the Sheep, movies they're gonna still do in the future, but after seeing this, I just want more and more. I mean, I don't care if they're even shorts. Like, just give me more Wallace and Gromit. If you can't give me the Pirates Band of Misfits sequel, at least you can give me is more Wallace and Gromit. I really hope that Nick Park, after this, I really hope Nick Park, does more Wallace and Gromit projects. And I don't care how long it needs to be. I don't care how long they need to do another project. If I'll just simply patiently wait if the project is going to be as beautiful and well done as this one was. So overall, not really I don't have too many negative thoughts about this one, because like I said, the only thing, like I said, it could be they could have made maybe the story a little bit more interesting and exciting, but still, even with that, it's not a big complaint. It's only a nitpicky thing I have for this, which of course brings me to the rating. Of course, now you already saw it, but basically brings me to the rating, which of course is 8.5 out of 10 shadows. That's basically how I would have given what I will give to Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Fowl. I mean, I gave Curse of the Were-Rabbit a 9 out of 10 when I first saw it in the cinema when I was little. But I'm giving this one an 8.5 out of 10, which I think it's still a really well. I still think it's a really great rating for a movie like this. And with that being said, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. We have another live review, all done. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I really don't have, it went very quickly because, like I said, again, I don't have really big complaints about this movie. I really enjoy the hell out of it. It was heartwarming. It was charming. It was beautifully made. I liked the story. A little bit simpler, a little bit simple, unlike the Curse of the Were-Rabbit, but overall, with Wallace and Gromit, the helm and everything, I adore this movie. I mean, almost every. And by the way, I just want to say this. Okay, this is kind of like a spoiler thing, I mean, okay, you know what? Fuck it. I'm not gonna say it, but there's a surprise. Now, if you're familiar with the Aardman projects, there's a specific cameo in this movie that if you have seen some certain movies, I think you will recognize this cameo. But I thought it was a really nice touch, as an addition to, to this movie. I thought it was a really nice touch. It also kind of confirms, I mean, we got that, ever since the close shave, that, they're both in the same universe, and again, with that being said, I think you guys already know what I'm talking about, but yet again, if you see this cameo, if you know from where it comes from, then good for you. But overall, I thought it was a nice touch. So with that being said, here we are, done. Thank you guys for enjoying another live review of, in this case, Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Fowl. You guys know the drill. Comment, like, subscribe. Give me all personal thoughts in the comment section down below about if you have seen Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Fowl already. What you thought about the movie? What you thought about the characters? What you thought about Feathers McGraw as the main villain? All the general, comments for Wallace and Gromit's new movie in the comment section down below. But until then, stay tuned for more. And like always, Lord of Shadows, signing off. And of course, as I always love to say it, later, fuckers. See ya.